The rain fell soft against the windows of the Seattle Command Center. Commander Allison Hayes watched the drops slide down the glass. She had been standing there for 20 minutes, trying to find calm in the storm. Her reflection stared back at her. Dark circles under her eyes, brown hair pulled tight in a bun. The blue uniform of the United Earth Defense Force pressed and perfect despite 3 days without sleep. The alarm made her turn. A red light flashed above the main screen. Her second-in-command, Major Frank Collins, rushed to the control panel. "What, is it?" Hayes asked, moving quickly to his side. "Reports coming in from everywhere, Commander. Tokyo, Cairo, Buenos Aires, London." His fingers moved across the screen, bringing up video feeds. 317 reports so far. Hayes felt cold spread through her chest as the images appeared. Empty classroom seats, hospital beds with machines still beeping but no patients, playgrounds with toys dropped mid-game. "Show me the footage," she said. The screen split into dozens of small videos. Each told the same story: children in various places, a strange blue light, then empty space where the children had been moments before. "It happened at exactly the same time," Collins said. 9:17 am Eastern Standard Time worldwide. Hayes pressed her palm against the desk to steady herself. "The signature of the energy bursts?" Lieutenant Kelly Morris, their technology specialist, looked up from her station. "It matches the teleportation technology of the Zorians, Commander. 3 years ago, the Zorian ships had appeared in Earth's orbit. The first contact with an alien race had gone better than anyone had expected. The tall, blue-skinned beings with 4 arms and silver eyes had seemed peaceful. They offered new technology. They talked about cultural exchange. They spoke of the Zorian Empire spanning thousands of worlds across the galaxy. "Get me a secure line to the Zorian ambassador," Hayes ordered. Morris shook her head. "We've been trying for the last hour. Their embassy is empty. Their ships are gone from orbit." Hayes turned to the large screen showing Earth from space. "Track their jump signature." "Already done," Collins said. "They left our solar system. The trail leads toward the Orion Arm." "The children?" Hayes asked, her voice tight. "No way to tell yet," Morris said. "But if they use their teleportation technology, then they took our children to their empire." Hayes finished. The room fell silent. President Eleanor Vega walked into the command center 10 minutes later. At 62, with silver-streaked, black hair and the posture of a former soldier, she carried the weight of humanity's response on her shoulders. "Tell me everything," she said. Hayes showed her the data. The president watched without speaking, her face growing harder with each new piece of information. "They called it a cultural exchange program," Hayes explained. "They wanted to study our schools, hospitals, homes. We thought they were learning about us, but they were mapping our children, studying their genetic patterns for targeted teleportation." "How many?" the president asked. 317 confirmed so far. Ages 4 to 15. From 46 countries. The president walked to the window, looking out at the rain. "We knew this day might come. That's why we built the program." Hayes nodded. After first contact, Earth's nations had come together to create a contingency plan if the aliens ever showed hostile intent. The plan had seemed extreme to some, unnecessary to others. Now it was their only hope. "Activate Protocol Phantom," President Vega ordered. "Full deployment." Hayes pressed her palm against the scanner on the desk. "Command authorization, Hayes Alpha 793. Activate Protocol Phantom." Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, in bunkers built into the stone, computers came alive. Messages went out to 70,000 people across the planet. Men and women who had been selected, trained, and prepared for this moment. People chosen for their skills, their intelligence, and their determination. Many were parents of the missing children. Samantha Powell was teaching her college xenolinguistics class when her phone vibrated with a pattern she had hoped never to feel. 5 short pulses, too long. The signal. She excused herself, walked calmly to her office, and locked the door. The message on her secure tablet was simple. "Protocol Phantom activated. Report to staging area within 24 hours." She opened her desk drawer and removed a false bottom. Inside was a small device the size of a coin. She pressed her thumb against it and a hidden door in her office wall slid open. Behind it was everything she would need: specialized equipment, weapons, and the coordinates for her designated staging area. As she prepared to leave, a news alert flashed on her tablet. She froze when she saw the report about missing children across the globe. Her hands began to shake as she called her ex-husband. "Greg? Is Lily okay? Is she at school?" The silence on the other end told her everything. "She's gone, Sam," he finally said, his voice breaking. "She was at recess. The teacher said there was a blue light and then she was just gone." Samantha closed her eyes, feeling rage rise like a tide. Her 7-year-old daughter, taken. The Zorians had no idea what they had just done. They had taken children from a species that would cross galaxies to get them back. "I have to go," she said. "Go? What do you mean, go?" "Sam, what's happening?" "I can't explain. But I'm going to find her, Greg. I promise you that." She ended the call and finished gathering her equipment. Her background as a Navy SEAL before becoming a linguistics professor had put her on the list for Protocol Phantom. Now her skills would serve a purpose she had never imagined: finding her daughter in the vastness of an alien empire. Across Earth, similar scenes played out. Dr. Nathan Clark left his laboratory at MIT without a word to his colleagues. Major Kyle Rodriguez told his commanding officer he needed emergency leave. Dr. Olivia Washington canceled all her medical appointments. General Marcus Rivera walked out of the Pentagon into a waiting helicopter. In the Seattle Command Center, Hayes watched as reports came in. The Phantom operatives were responding. The plan was in motion. "What do we tell the public?" asked Collins. President Vega straightened her jacket. "The truth that our children have been taken, that we will get them back, but not how." She turned to Hayes. "The Zorians believe they've encountered a primitive species they can study and sample as they please. They're about to learn how wrong they are." Hayes nodded. 70,000 operatives, the largest covert military operation in human history. "They thought we were weak," the president said. "They should have asked themselves, what kind of species would a wise empire choose to make an enemy of? Not one that would send 70,000 of its best into the darkness to bring its children home." Outside, the rain stopped. A patch of sunlight broke through the clouds. 6 months passed since the children vanished. Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, inside a facility carved from solid stone, General Marcus Rivera walked through halls filled with activity. Men and women moved with purpose, carrying equipment, studying screens, or training in large open rooms. Rivera stopped at a viewing window overlooking the largest chamber. Below, 1,000 people practiced hand-to-hand combat against opponents who wore suits designed to mimic Zorian physiology. The aliens were taller than humans, with 4 arms and different balance points. The operatives had spent months learning how to fight them. "General," a voice called. Rivera turned to see Captain Samantha Powell approaching. Her eyes had the same haunted look shared by many of the operatives who had lost children. "Captain Powell," Rivera nodded. "Your team is ready?" "Yes, sir," she said. "We've mastered the language patterns, studied their social structures, and can operate all identified Zorian technology." She paused. "We're ready to bring our children home." Rivera led her to a secure room where other team leaders had gathered. The wall displayed a map of the Zorian Empire, thousands of stars connected by lines representing travel routes. Red dots marked planets where human children might be held. "Dr. Clark has an update," Rivera said, gesturing to a thin man with glasses who stood near the display. Dr. Nathan Clark had been studying alien technology since the Zorians first arrived on Earth. His team had secretly captured and examined several Zorian devices during their diplomatic visits. "We've completed work on the personal teleporters," Clark announced. He held up a small disk that fit in the palm of his hand. "Based on stolen Zorian technology but modified for human genetic patterns. Each operative will carry one. They can transport you up to 50 light-years in a single jump." He pressed a button, and the disk projected a holographic display. The Empire spans a vast area, but their security has a critical weakness: arrogance. They believe no primitive species could understand their technology, let alone improve it. Captain Powell took one of the discs, turning it over in her hand. "And these will get us behind their lines?" "Yes," Clark said. "But that's not all. We've also created these." He opened a case containing what looked like ordinary watches. Holographic disguise units. They bend light around your body to make you appear Zorian. Not perfect, but good enough to move through their society without immediate detection. Rivera stepped forward. Operation Phantom will proceed in 3 phases. Phase 1, infiltration. All 70,000 operatives will teleport to assigned locations across the Empire within a 48-hour window. He pointed to different areas on the map. Phase 2, intelligence gathering. Your primary mission is to locate the children. Your secondary mission is to identify critical weaknesses in the Empire's infrastructure. "And Phase 3? Asked Major Kyle Rodriguez, a demolitions expert assigned to Powell's team. "Liberation," Rivera said simply. "Once we have the locations of all the children, we strike simultaneously across the Empire. We bring our children home, and we make sure the Zorians never threaten Earth again." Rivera turned to the gathered team leaders. "Each of you has been chosen not just for your skills, but for your ability to think independently. Once you're in Zorian space, communication with Earth will be limited. You'll need to make decisions on your own while staying aligned with the overall mission." After the briefing, Samantha Powell returned to her quarters. On her desk sat a photo of her daughter Lily, 7 years old with curly brown hair and a missing front tooth. She touched the image gently. "I'm coming for you," she whispered. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. Dr. Olivia Washington entered, carrying a medical kit. "Final checks," Washington said with a gentle smile. She had been a pediatric surgeon before the abductions. Now she was the medical officer for Powell's infiltration team. As Washington examined her, Powell asked, "Do you really think we can do this? 70,000 humans against an empire of trillions?" Washington continued her work, checking Powell's vitals. "My grandmother told me a story once about African honeybees. They can't kill a large predator one-on-one, but when their hive is threatened, they swarm by the thousands. Each bee knows exactly what to do without being told. The predator never stands a chance." She packed up her kit. "That's us now. The Zorians stole from our hive." 2 days later, the operation began. In the central command chamber, General Rivera and President Vega watched as the first teams prepared for teleportation. 70,000 people, Vega said quietly. Parents, soldiers, scientists, engineers. The best Earth has to offer. "Not just the best," Rivera replied. "The most motivated. Many have children among the taken. The others have committed themselves to this mission completely." On the teleportation platform, Samantha Powell stood with her team of 12. Dr. Washington checked her medical supplies one last time. Kyle Rodriguez made final adjustments to his specialized explosives that would work in any atmosphere. Linguist Peter Garcia reviewed Zorian dialect variations on his tablet. They all wore standard black uniforms with no identifying marks. Each carried a small pack with essential equipment. The teleportation discs were secured to their wrists. Rivera addressed the first wave over the communication system. "You are the advanced teams. Your destinations are research stations where we believe children are being held. Your primary objective is confirmation of their presence and status. Your secondary objective is to establish safe houses for the operatives who will follow." Powell looked at her team. They had trained together for months, learning to move as one unit, to communicate with subtle gestures, to fight and think like the enemies they would soon face. "Remember," Rivera continued, "the Zorians believe themselves superior in every way. They see other species as resources to be used. They took our children because they believed there would be no consequences. Show them how wrong they were." President Vega stepped forward. "When humanity first reached the stars, we hoped to find friendship. Instead, we found an empire built on the suffering of countless worlds. You go now, not just for our children, but for all those the Zorians have harmed. Powell checked her equipment one final time. The holographic disguise unit on her wrist was programmed with the appearance of a mid-level Zorian research assistant, the language module inserted behind. Her ear would translate in real time. The weapons concealed throughout her uniform were designed to pass through Zorian security scans. Teleportation sequence initiating, announced the control room technician. Coordinates locked for Research Station Helix 9, outer rim of the Zorian Empire. Powell thought of Lily. Somewhere in that vast empire, her daughter waited, perhaps frightened, perhaps not even aware of where she came from anymore. It didn't matter. Powell would find her. "Commence Operation Phantom," ordered Rivera. On the platform, Powell activated her teleportation disk. Her team followed suit. Blue energy surrounded them, similar to the light that had taken the children but now controlled by human hands. "For Earth," Powell said as the energy intensified around them. The last thing she saw before teleporting into the heart of the enemy empire was President Vega's nod of determination. Then they were gone, the first of 70,000 human operatives, vanishing from Earth to begin the greatest infiltration in human history. Blue light faded around Samantha Powell as she materialized in a narrow service corridor. Her team appeared seconds later, their bodies shifting and adjusting as the teleportation effects wore off. The air smelled strange, metallic with hints of something sweet. The gravity felt slightly lighter than Earth's. "Disguise units," Powell whispered. Each member of the team activated the devices on their wrists. Light shimmered around them, and suddenly, 12 Zorians stood where humans had been moments before. Powell looked down at her new blue skin and forearms. The hologram felt strange but would fool basic security scans. "Life signs normal," Dr. Washington reported, checking a small medical scanner. "Air is breathable but has higher oxygen content than Earth. Everyone take shallow breaths until your bodies adjust." Powell checked the small map displayed on her wrist device. They had arrived at Research Station Helix 9, a massive structure floating in space near the edge of Zorian territory. The station housed thousands of different life forms for study. "Remember the mission," Powell said. "Find the children, gather, intelligence, establish a safe house. Move in pairs, stay in character, and maintain calm silence unless absolutely necessary." Powell and Washington moved through the service corridor while the rest of the team split into pairs and headed for different sections of the station. They wore the holograms of maintenance workers, which would give them access to most areas without raising suspicion. They passed several real Zorians in the halls. Each time, Powell nodded respectfully and kept walking. The aliens barely glanced at them exactly as expected. The Zorian social structure was highly stratified. Lower-level workers were practically invisible to those of higher rank. After 30 minutes of careful movement, they reached a security door labeled in Zorian script. Garcia, their linguist, had taught them to read basic Zorian writing during training. The sign translated to Specimen Storage Level 3. Washington used a stolen access code to open the door. Inside was a vast chamber filled with transparent cylinders. Each contained a different life form suspended in clear liquid. Some looked almost like Earth creatures, mammals, reptiles, even something similar to birds. Others were completely alien. Powell moved carefully between the rows, searching. Her heart pounded so hard she worried it might disrupt her holographic disguise. Then she saw them. A section of smaller cylinders, each containing a human child. 47 children, floating in suspension, their eyes closed as if sleeping. "Found them," she whispered into her communicator. Washington joined her, running her scanner over the nearest cylinder. "They're alive, in some kind of suspended animation. Brain activity is minimal, but present." Powell moved down the row until she found what she was looking for, a small girl with curly brown hair. The cylinder's control panel displayed information in Zorian text. One word made Powell's blood freeze. Subject 271, Genetic Extraction Phase 2. "Lily," she whispered, touching the glass. Her daughter floated peacefully, unaware of her mother's presence just inches away. Washington scanned the cylinder. "She's healthy, Sam. No permanent damage detected." Powell forced herself to focus. "We need to access their database. Find out what they're doing with the children." "I don't think we want to know," Washington said quietly. "We need to know to stop it," Powell replied. They found a data terminal nearby. Using techniques taught by Dr. Clark, Powell bypassed the security and began downloading information onto a specialized device designed to decode Xorian data. "Multiple experiments," she read as the information appeared. "They're studying human adaptability, resistance to disease, cognitive development." She stopped, her face going pale beneath the blue hologram. "They're harvesting genetic material from the children, integrating it into their own species." "Why would they do that?" Washington asked. Before Powell could answer, an alarm blared throughout the station. "Intruder alert. Security breach in Sector 7, announced a voice in the Xorian language. "That's not us," Powell said. "We're in Sector 4. Her communicator activated. "Captain, this is Rodriguez. We've been spotted. Holographic disguise failed during a high-level security scan. Fall back to extraction point," Powell ordered. "Everyone maintain cover if possible." She turned to Washington. "We need to finish the download and get out of here." As they worked, Powell's communicator activated again. "Captain, this is Garcia. I'm at the Central Communications Hub. You need to see what I'm seeing, sending you the feed now." An image appeared on Powell's wrist device. It showed a massive hall filled with thousands of cylinders, far larger than the room they were in. Each one contained a different alien species. "This isn't just about human children," Garcia's voice explained. "They've been doing this across the entire galaxy. Thousands of species, millions of individuals." Powell felt sick. "They're building some kind of library of genetic material." "Worse," Garcia said. "According to the files I've accessed, they're creating a new warrior caste, taking the most useful traits from each species and combining them." Washington looked up from her scanner. "These children aren't just specimens, they're raw materials." Powell's mind raced. This changed everything. The mission wasn't just about saving Earth's children anymore. It was about stopping an empire that treated entire species as resources to be harvested. The data download completed. Powell pocketed the device just as 4 Xorian security officers entered the room. They carried weapons similar to rifles but with glowing blue power cells. "Maintenance is not authorized in this sector," one said in the Xorian language. "Identify yourselves." Powell bowed respectfully, following the cultural protocols they had studied. "Apologies, Overseer. We were directed to check environmental controls after fluctuations were reported." The lead security officer stepped closer, eyes narrowing. No such directive was issued. Powell knew their disguises wouldn't hold up under close inspection. She glanced at Washington and gave a slight nod. In one smooth motion, both women deactivated their holographic disguises. The Xorians stepped back in shock at seeing humans appear before them. "Primitives," one shouted, raising his weapon. Powell moved faster than the Xorians expected. Humans had trained for months to fight the 4-armed aliens. The Xorians had never trained to fight humans. She struck the first guard in the throat, where Xorian anatomy was most vulnerable. Washington fired a small dart into the second, the sedative designed specifically for Xorian physiology. The third guard managed to fire his weapon. A bolt of energy scorched the wall behind Powell as she rolled and came up with a stolen Xorian pistol. 2 quick shots and the remaining guards collapsed. "We've lost our cover," Powell said, grabbing a communicator from one of the fallen guards. "New plan. Contact all teams. Tell them we're accelerating the timetable." "What about the children?" Washington asked, looking at the rows of cylinders. "We can't extract them yet," Powell said, her eyes lingering on Lily's suspended form. "But we know where they are now. And we know what we're really fighting against." She activated her team communicator. "All units, this is Captain Powell. First objective complete. Children located. But the situation is bigger than we knew. The Xorians aren't just taking human children. They're harvesting genetic material from thousands of species across the galaxy. From across the station and beyond, reports from other human operatives began coming in. Similar discoveries on dozens of worlds. An empire built on the exploitation of countless species. Commence Phase 2, Powell ordered. Full intelligence. Gathering. Find their weaknesses. Make contact with other captive species if possible. She looked back at her daughter's suspended form. I'll be back for you, she promised. And when I come, it won't just be Earth fighting for you. It will be every world these monsters have ever harmed. 6 months after the initial infiltration, the Zorian Empire faced problems unlike anything in its 1,000-year history. Power grids failed on major worlds. Ships disappeared during routine jumps. Food distribution systems sent supplies to the wrong planets. Communication networks carried strange messages or stopped working entirely. Admiral Victoria Bennett sat aboard her stealth carrier hidden in an asteroid field near the edge of Zorian space. The ship, named Shadow, served as the forward command post for Operation Phantom. Around her, a team of officers monitored communications from human operatives across the Empire. Report, Bennett ordered. Colonel Alan Murphy stepped forward. All 70,000 operatives are now in position across the Empire. We have people on every major world, aboard key military vessels and inside critical facilities. Bennett nodded. And the children? We've located 291 of them, Murphy said. The remaining 26 are likely on mobile research vessels that are harder to track. Captain Powell's team has been particularly effective. They've not only found 47 children on Research Station Helix 9, but they've also made contact with representatives from other captive species. Bennett turned to the large display showing a map of the Zorian Empire. Red dots marked confirmed locations of human children. Yellow dots showed facilities where human operatives had established safe houses. Blue dots represented places where they had made contact with other species willing to help. There were thousands of dots. The Xorians have no idea what's happening, Murphy continued. Their entire system is built on absolute control. They've never faced an enemy that fights from within. On the Zorian capital world of Zenth Prime, High Commander Vexnar stood before the Emperor's council. His silver eyes reflected the anger he felt but could not express before his superiors. The disruptions continue to spread, he reported. We have lost contact with 17 outer worlds. Power failures have affected key military installations on 3 core worlds. The central navigation network shows signs of tampering. The Emperor, a Zorian twice the size of others with 6 arms instead of 4, leaned forward on his throne. You speak of these events as if they are connected, High Commander. Are they not simply failures in our systems? Vexnar hesitated. Suggesting the Empire had enemies capable of such widespread sabotage could be seen as an insult to Zorian superiority. But the evidence was becoming impossible to ignore. My Emperor, I believe we face a coordinated attack. The timing and nature of these incidents suggest intelligent planning. Another council member scoffed. By whom? No species in our empire possesses the capability to challenge us in this manner. The humans, Vexnar said. The chamber fell silent. The primitive bipeds from the outer arm, the Emperor asked. They barely have interplanetary travel. We took their offspring, Vexnar reminded them, for our genetic harvesting program. The Emperor waved 2 of his 6 hands dismissively. As we have done with 100 other species, none have posed any threat in response. Vexnar activated a holographic display. It showed security footage from a research facility. A maintenance worker suddenly transformed into a human female who moved with surprising speed, disabling 4 armed guards before they could react. This was recorded 3 months ago, Vexnar explained. We believed it was an isolated incident, but similar reports have come from across the Empire. Always humans, always operating with precise knowledge of our systems. The Emperor stood, his massive frame towering over the council. How many of these creatures have infiltrated our space? Unknown, Vexnar admitted, but intelligence suggests the number is significant. In a remote sector of the Empire, intelligence officer Daniel Miller and his team had spent months infiltrating the Imperial archives. Disguised as low-level data clerks, they had gained access to the Empire's most sensitive information. Miller sat at a terminal deep in the archive complex, carefully inserting a small device Dr. Clark had designed. Around him, 3 team members kept watch, their holographic disguises making them appear as ordinary Zorian archivists. "I'm into their central command protocols," Miller whispered, downloading their emergency response directives. "Hurry," said Linda Parker, one of his team members. "Guard rotation in 4 minutes." The device blinked as it absorbed massive amounts of data. Miller's eyes widened as he scanned the incoming information. "They have contingency plans for everything," he said. "Rebellion, invasion, natural disasters. But nothing for this kind of infiltration. They've never imagined an enemy could penetrate their society so completely." The download completed. Miller removed the device and erased all traces of his access. They slipped out of the archive room just as a new shift of guards arrived. Back on their hidden base in an abandoned mining facility, Miller transmitted the data to Admiral Bennett. On the Shadow, Bennett gathered her senior officers to review the new intelligence. "The Zorians have finally realized they're under attack," she announced. "But they still don't understand the scale of our operation." She brought up a display showing the Empire's fleet movements. "They're increasing security at their major installations, but it's too late. We're already inside." Colonel Murphy pointed to several blinking points on the map. "These are their primary command and control nodes. If we can disrupt these simultaneously, their military response will be crippled." Bennett nodded. "And the children? Are we ready for extraction?" "Almost," Murphy replied. "Captain Powell's team has developed a method to safely remove them from the suspension chambers. We need to coordinate the extractions across all locations simultaneously to prevent the Zorians from moving the remaining children deeper into their territory." Bennett studied the tactical display. 70,000 human operatives against an empire of trillions should have been impossible odds, but the Zorians had never faced an enemy like humanity before. "Begin Phase 3, she ordered. "Send the signal to all operatives. In 72 hours, we strike." On Research Station Helix 9, Samantha Powell received the message. Her team had grown in the past months, joined by members of 6 different alien species who had also had their children taken by the Zorians. "It's time," she told them. "Phase 3 begins in 72 hours. Dr. Washington looked up from the medical equipment she had been preparing. "Are we ready to move the children?" Powell nodded. "The stasis field generators are in place. We can sustain their suspended state during transport." She walked to the hidden chamber where they had relocated the 47 human children. Looking at her daughter's peaceful face in the suspension chamber, Powell felt a mix of hope and determination. 3 days, she said. 3 days and we bring them home." Across the vast empire, 70,000 human operatives received the same message. After months of infiltration and sabotage, they would now strike directly at the heart of Zorian power, and the empire that had taken their children would learn why humans were the most dangerous species they had ever encountered. The day of reckoning arrived. Across the vast Zorian empire, 70,000 human operatives and their allies prepared to strike. They had spent months learning the enemy's weaknesses, placing devices in critical systems, and building a network that spanned thousands of worlds. On the imperial capital of Zenth Prime, Daniel Miller walked calmly through the grand halls of the Central Command Complex. His holographic disguise showed him as a high-ranking Zorian official. 6 other operatives from his team walked with him, all wearing similar disguises. They carried small devices that would disrupt the Empire's ability to respond to what was about to happen. In orbit around Zenth Prime, 3 human operatives who had infiltrated the crew of a Zorian battleship waited at their stations. They had spent months gaining the trust of their alien commanders. On Research Station Helix 9, Samantha Powell checked her equipment one last time. Her team had positioned portable stasis units around each suspension chamber containing a human child. Dr. Washington ran final checks on the medical systems. "All green," Washington confirmed. "The children will stay in suspended animation during transport. No risk to their health." Powell looked at her daughter Lily, still floating peacefully in her chamber. "After today, You'll wake up back on Earth, she promised quietly. Her communicator beeped, a simple tone that carried the most important message of the operation. It was time. Admiral Bennett stood on the bridge of the Shadow, looking at the tactical display showing the positions of all human operatives. Commence Phase 3, she ordered. All units execute. Across the Empire, human operatives pressed buttons on small devices, activated hidden programs, and triggered systems they had spent months planting throughout Zorian infrastructure. On Zenth Prime, the lights went out. Emergency systems failed to activate. Communication networks fell silent. The massive defense grid protecting the capital world suddenly powered down. In the Emperor's palace, confusion turned to panic as security systems failed. Guards rushed to protect the Emperor, but they found their weapons would not fire. Hi. Commander Vexnar stared in disbelief at displays showing similar patterns across the entire Empire. Impossible, he whispered. Daniel Miller and his team reached the Central Command Core. They disabled the few guards who still had functioning weapons and accessed the main control systems. Initiating final sequence, Miller said into his communicator. He inserted a device Dr. Clark had designed into the main console. Central Command is now under our control. On worlds throughout the Empire, human operatives moved to secure the locations where children were held. The Zorians, facing simultaneous failures of all their systems, could offer little resistance. On Research Station Helix 9, Powell led her team to the chamber containing the 47 human children. Alarms blared, but the security systems had been disabled. Begin extraction, she ordered. The team activated the portable stasis units. Each child's suspension chamber opened with a soft hiss. Team members carefully transferred the children to the transport units. Powell herself moved Lily, gently lifting her daughter's suspended form into the specialized container. Almost home, she whispered. A group of Zorian guards appeared at the entrance to the chamber, weapons raised. Before they could fire, several alien figures emerged from hiding places around the room. These were representatives of other species whose children had also been taken, now allies in the fight against the Empire. This chamber is secure, said Cattell, a tall being with 4 eyes who had become Powell's friend during the long months of planning. Get the children to your transport. Powell nodded her thanks. We'll be back for your children next, she promised. Cattell made a gesture that signified gratitude in his culture. Go. Today the Zorians learned they are not the only power in the galaxy. Similar scenes played out across thousands of locations. Human operatives, working with newly freed allies from other species, secured their children and prepared for extraction. Zenth Prime, the most daring part of the plan, unfolded. Daniel Miller's team had reached the Emperor himself. The massive Zorian sat on his throne, surrounded by guards whose weapons and communication devices no longer functioned. What is the meaning of this? The Emperor demanded. Who dares challenge the Empire? Miller deactivated his holographic disguise, revealing his human form. The Emperor's eyes widened in shock. The Primitives, he said in disbelief. We came for our children, Miller replied simply. But we found so much more. An empire built on the suffering of thousands of species. That ends today. He activated a device that projected a message to every communication system still functioning throughout the Empire. The face of President Eleanor Vega appeared, addressing not just the Zorians, but all the subjugated species. To all beings under Zorian rule, she said, I speak to you from Earth. For too long, the Empire has taken children from countless worlds, harvested genetic material from sentient beings and ruled through fear. Today, that rule is broken. On Research Station Helix 9, Powell and her team loaded the stasis units containing the children onto their hidden transport ship. Similar extractions occurred simultaneously across the Empire. All children secured. At this location, Powell reported. Beginning transport to Earth. Admiral Bennett received reports from across the Empire. 287 children confirmed in our custody. Search continues for the remaining 30. Bennett allowed herself a small smile. Begin withdrawal of non-essential personnel, The human operatives had achieved their primary objective, but many chose to remain behind. They had formed bonds with other oppressed species, promised to help free their children too. The fight against the Empire had become something larger than a rescue mission. 3 weeks later on Earth, Samantha Powell stood in a medical facility in Geneva. Around her, hundreds of families waited anxiously as doctors prepared to wake the layaway children from suspended animation. Dr. Washington monitored the equipment as the stasis field around Lily Powell began to fade. The little girl's eyes fluttered, then opened. She looked confused for a moment, then saw her mother. "Mom?" she said, her voice weak from disuse. "I had the strangest dream." Powell gathered her daughter in her arms, tears flowing freely. "It's over now," she said. "You're home." Across the room, similar reunions took place. Parents embraced children they had feared lost forever. President Vega entered the facility accompanied by General Rivera and Admiral Bennett. They watched the reunions with quiet satisfaction. "And the Empire?" Rivera asked. "In chaos," Bennett replied. "The Emperor has been replaced by a council representing all species. Many worlds have declared independence. The Zorians are learning to live as equals rather than rulers." Vega nodded. "We went to save our children. We ended up freeing a galaxy." Outside the facility, representatives from 27 alien species waited. They had come to Earth not as enemies or subjects, but as allies who had fought alongside. Humans against a common oppressor. "What happens now?" Rivera asked. Vega watched as Samantha Powell carried her daughter toward the exit, the little girl's arms wrapped tightly around her mother's neck. "Now we build something better," the president said. "Together,